Whalers are home for the final time. Our Sports Channel cameras are inside the Hartford Civic Center to capture the emotion of this historic day. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Forsland. As always, thanks for joining us. Well, it's the meaningless game with tremendous meaning. Both teams, the Hartford Whalers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, have been eliminated from Stanley Cup playoff contention. But for Whaler fans and the team, today means everything. We welcome Bill Gardner. Billy spent 9 seasons in the National Hockey League, part of that career with the Hartford Whalers. Partner, you've donned the spirit. You have the old colors on, and that's great to see.
It's 11 years old, and I never thought I'd see the day when this franchise would not be here in Hartford. I know they started off in the WHA. The transition to the NHL was great. There were some excellent years here. And by far, the most meaningful aspect of the whole situation is the fans. A great hardcore group of fans. Today's game is for them, and I wish I was on the ice to help out a little bit.
The fans are certainly the #1 star and will be this afternoon. The emotion in the building, you can really feel it as you walk around and talk to people, the people that have been part of Hartford Whaler tradition. It's amazing.
Well, you see the fans right here, and they came out yesterday. John, you ran the award ceremony here for the Hartford Whalers individually, and the fans have been great. And what I like about this group of fans, showing class because of this situation. They never got down on the Hartford Whalers as a team. They supported this team. I think the team fooled them because I thought, and the fans thought, and the players thought we'd be having a few more games here in the playoffs. But the fans have been tremendous. And tonight, as I said earlier, really this game is for the fans, and this team should be up for this game. It should be a good one.
Has all the time in the world for everybody.
The best compliment for anyone is a pro, and that's what he is. That's all. Just a pro. Face off in the zone. That's all that remains. And the crowd is cherishing every moment. Norton in the corner. It's over, folks. It's been a great ride. The Whalers will go out winners.
Who had the last game-winning goal as a Hartford Whaler? Kevin Deneen.
I know.
Which is fitting.
It absolutely is. They got a book out for this one. They followed that book to a T. The Hartford Whalers did not let the 14,660 here down today. They have never let the team down over the years. The hardcore bleed green fans that have been with this team for so long are here today and deserve this 2-1 win.
Welcome to Good Seats Still Available, a curious little podcast devoted to exploring what used to be in professional sports. Here's your host, Tim Hanlon.
Well, greetings and salutations, friends. How are you? My name's Tim Hanlon, and you have stumbled across our little podcast journey we call Good Seats Still Available, our curious little podcast journey into what used to be in professional sports. A special treat for all you hockey fans out there, especially those who grew up or still live in the New England area. And we're going to be talking about the team that was ripped apart from the fabric of Hartford, Connecticut, the Whalers, the Hartford Whalers. Of course, they started off as the WHA, World Hockey Association, New England Whalers, and then became the NHL Hartford Whalers in years afterwards. But in the late 90s, of course, were taken away, if you will, for supposedly greener pastures in North Carolina, Raleigh-Durham in particular, where they now reside, known as the Carolina Hurricanes. And we'll get into some of our conversation with the Whaler guys, Peter Hindle and Jerry Erwin, the folks behind the long-running Hartford Public Access television show, the Whaler guys, devoted to all things Hartford Whalers. We'll get into it as to whether that move was successful or not, the current status of the Carolina Hurricanes, the interesting re-embrace of the heritage that the Carolina Hurricanes have, having been previously in the port of Hartford, Connecticut, the Whalers franchise. We get into all of that with our new friends, Peter Hindle and Jerry Erwin, the Whaler guys, and all things Hartford Whalers hockey in just a couple of minutes. A very fun and interesting conversation, and you will hear absolutely the passion that these guys have It's not just a TV show locally produced and run. You can see all their stuff on YouTube, and we'll get to all their social media feeds, etc. But they are on a crusade, make no mistake, to bring back hockey, NHL style, to Hartford. Bring back the Whalers. It's an interesting team with a very interesting heritage, certainly a very strong, passionate fan base, and you're going to hear in our chat lots of different components that, frankly, just won't go away. Everything from a theme song to the logo, jerseys that are being reissued and are found all across the league in the United States, and even a license plate that these guys, Jerry and Peter, the Whaler guys, actually help get through Connecticut legislation, and you can buy if you're a Connecticut resident. Proceeds go to charity, but you can show your fandom of being a previous or, frankly, still current Hartford Whalers NHL hockey fan. It's a fun thing, and this is exactly the kind of fun and interesting dialogues we love to get into here on this show. The passion, the heritage, the history, and maybe the once again. And this is a really, I think, emblematic conversation about a team that touched a chord and perhaps will resonate once again with a forlorn, shall we say, fan base in Hartford, Connecticut, the state of Connecticut, generally New England, perhaps even more broadly, the Hartford Whalers. And we're going to talk about that with Peter and Jerry in just a couple of seconds. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget, of course, to please visit early and often our sponsors and perhaps partake of some of their wares. One of which is, of course, sportshistorycollectibles.com. Sportshistorycollectibles.com. That's the place to find all kinds of fun memorabilia, stuff from teams and leagues past, and including, I'm almost certain, at least a few items from the old Hartford Whalers that you will find on sportshistorycollectibles.com. And if you find something you're just enamored with and you want to have, and you gotta have, please indeed use the promo code GOODSEATS at checkout, and you're going to get 15% off that purchase, and all purchases for that matter. Sportshistorycollectibles.com. Use that promo code GOODSEATS and get 15% off your purchases. We thank Dean Mitchell, proprietor of sportshistorycollectibles.com, for his patronage of our show, and we encourage all of you to show some love to him and the site, and by extension, giving us some love as well. We appreciate that. And of course, we also appreciate your giving out giving a try, shall we say, to our friends at Audible. audibletrial.com/goodseats. That's the place to go to check out and get your free audiobook download to give a try to what audiobooks are all about. Audible. Yeah, Audible audiobooks are the best things ever, right? No doubt. Get a free 1-month subscription to the Audible service, and of course, a free audiobook download from a vast array of over 180,000 titles to choose from, and you will see and enjoy the beauty that is an audiobook. And I encourage you to give it a try. I'm pretty certain that you will find it to be a complement to your audio listening journeys, whether it be podcasting or audio or streaming, songs, music and whatnot. Having audiobooks at your fingertips or near your earbuds. A great way to pass the time on a long airplane ride or a commute. Audibletrial.com/goodseats is the place to give that a try. 1 free month of the Audible service and 1 free audiobook download for you to try. You can cancel at any time. Did I say that properly? You can cancel at any time. So it's really no risk. Give it a try. Audibletrial.com/goodseats. And as they say, you'll be glad you did. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let us skate, shall we say? No pun intended, perhaps pun intended, I don't know, into the conversation that we were had just a couple of weeks back with our new friends, the Whaler guys, Peter Hindle and Jerry Erwin. Here is our chat. Tell me about your fandom of this team and what has inspired you to essentially carry the torch in various ways, going forward.
Well, I'll start. This is Jerry. I actually worked for the Hartford Whalers in the 87-88 season. It dates back all the way to when I was about 7 years old and went to the Hartford Civic Center in about 1975 and watch the New England Whalers of the WHA take on the USSR, the Red Army team from the Soviet Union, with the likes of Brad Selwood, Nick Fatiu, Johnny McKenzie. We had Bruce Landon in goal with Al Smith, Cap Raider, Christian Abrahamson and Tommy Abrahamson, the identical twins from the New England Whalers. And from that point, when I was lucky enough to go to that one game, New England Whalers, I followed the club all the way on, unfortunately, till their departure when they were taken from the city of Hartford, because that's what happened. They were taken from us. And our passion, Peter and myself, took over about 7 years ago when we started this pilgrimage of having a TV show that has been named The Whaler Guys, Whaler Talk, Whaler Nation, on Public Access TV, Twitter. We actually had a podcast that we called Shut Your Blowhole. So we've been doing it for quite a while, and we are Whaler fans until the day someone tells us to stop fighting the fight, and we're not ready to give up just yet.
Yeah, and I was going to say, this is Peter, by the way. So, it's funny when you look at it. It's kind of like the Whalers are the Brooklyn Dodgers of Major League Baseball. And, I know it's only 21 years and the Dodgers have been gone. And the things here that are sacred have been sacred for 35, 40 years. One is, everyone loves Howard Baldwin from the standpoint that he made this happen. He moved the team from Boston, a larger market, came to Hartford and with the WHA, and he made that all happen. And the other things is the logo is basically a crest of the city almost. It's everybody loves that logo. I don't think Sherry and I would be doing a show today if it wasn't for that logo. It's kind of like our third co-host. The colors are very sacred and that type of thing. And then there's the hockey, the Hartford hockey Mount Rushmore of players. And you look at it and it's Gordie Howe for one, and not many teams can say that, as you know. Gordie Howe, Ron Francis, Kevin Dineen, and Ulf Samuelsson. Those jerseys still hang from the Civic Center today. And actually, a couple of years ago, when UConn had joined Hockey East and adopted Brass Bonanza as our goal song, when they came into the XL Center, there was a banner hanging shortage. And the Whaler jerseys were actually taken down. And the public outcry was so strong that the governor had to issue a statement about replacing the banners up. Because people were just absolutely livid that the banners would be taken down. So it's pretty amazing. Hartford is a small city in standpoint. So you look at Boston and New York, but being Hartford, Springfield, New Haven area is the 30th largest market. It's the largest without a major league sports team. And in that area, we've done a lot of market research on this market. And within a half hour to 45 minutes, the XL Center is a market of 1.3 million people that have the median income to support an NHL team. So it's a very much a wanted thing. But the bottom line is the arena, which we're still struggling with to update to modern NHL standards. And that's, once that gets done, if it ever gets done, then we have a seat at the table to try and convince the NHL to relocate a franchise or try to find an investor who would be interesting. But, we hear a lot of rumblings. We just hope that at some point, that once the arena gets fixed, that things will start to really pick up. But the support has been great. I mean, we are still blown away by how much support we get on our YouTube channel. We have over 30,000 views from 100 countries, all over the world. So, we've been, we always say we're a couple of schmucks with a TV show, but it's worked. And, carrying the Whaler banner and all the fans, we wouldn't even have the show if there wasn't so much support for bringing back the Hartford Whalers.
All right, well, let's talk about that TV show, right? So explain to our audience who's outside the Connecticut or the Hartford area at least, what this show is. And I'm just really curious to sort of get some sense as to when it started, why you decided to do it, and what are you trying to do with it besides, I guess, keep the logo alive, right? It sounds to me like there's a bit of a crusade there ongoing, right?
Oh, absolutely. About 7 years ago, I work at a local university, and one of the employees at the media center said, your passion for the Whalers is amazing. You should do a TV show. I thought the man was smoking some illegal contraband. So I had to ask him, why would you say such a thing? And he told me he worked at a local public access TV station, and they were looking for shows to come on. So I had reached out to Peter and met him through social media as another Whaler fan. And so we started what was originally through the Hartford Whalers Booster Club, the Whaler Talk. And it was just as simple as, hey, we got to keep our name out there in case people are looking to invest in a team and relocate them to Hartford. And through that, we created, like I said before, a podcast called Shut Your Blowhole, which unfortunately we had to kind of put in the back seat for right now because the show keeps us busy with local events and local hockey, covering the AHL club, the Hartford Wolfpack here, and the Yukon Huskies ice hockey. So, with the show, what we've done is kind of wrapped ourselves into the Hartford community. With that being said, Peter and I championed the license plate idea with regard to going in front of the legislature, testifying to get Hartford Whalers license plates, with it benefiting the Connecticut Children's Medical Center here in Hartford, because back when the Whalers were here, one of their main charities was the Yukon Children's Cancer Fund. So for Peter and I, it was showing the community that, yes, we love hockey, we love Hartford, we constantly are bringing up what Hartford's trying to do to modernize and get the millennials downtown, but what can we do for something good? And $45 of each of those license plates will go to the Connecticut Children's Medical Center, and that happened January of 2018, and as of this point, over 340 plates have been sold to the public, which equates to about $18,000 going to the Connecticut Children's Medical Center for a brand new dialysis unit for that hospital.
Well, so let's talk about that license plate thing for a second, because I'm not sure that folks outside the region sort of understand that. This is, and frankly, not an easy process, I would imagine, because you got to go through various layers of government and legislature and all that kind of stuff. But maybe you could just quickly give our audience a sense of what this is. What is the license plate? This is a state-issued plate with the Hartford Whalers logo and such. Yes.
Yes, actually, we thought about it because in Connecticut you'll see plates, with Red Sox logos on it. We actually, believe it or not, and this is one of the local news networks love this story because there's actually an alumni Penn State plate in Connecticut, and we thought, this town needs a plate with a team that was their own, our team, a team that belongs to us. And so everybody kept saying the NHL is never going to let you put a logo on a plate without giving them some kind of kickback, or they're just they're not going to want to do that, and blah blah blah. So we started looking at the process, and we found out that we needed 400 signatures just to get it recognized by the Transportation Committee and the legislature. So I can't tell you, I want to say that we slaved away, but we had like a handful of Whaler fans, and we got 800 signatures. We doubled the signatures very quickly because everybody's like, Jerry and I ordered plates. Everybody, if it's a Whaler fan, would want a plate. So that was great. We got all these, these signatures, but you had to testify before the Transportation Committee. We needed a sponsor, so we needed to lobby to get a representative of the state legislature to sponsor our bill. So we had to do that as well. And after we brought some Whaler fans also went to testify with us. So we had some, and then it goes through the process of the legislature of passing the bill. And it was dicey. We did get a couple times we got information and said, it's just not a good time to do that now or that type of thing. But we kept lobbying. We would speak to other representatives, and enough representatives said that they were getting calls from people other than us, which really helped, of course. And they ended up putting it into a large transportation bill, and it passed. And the NHL went for it because I think that they realized that they made a mistake leaving Hartford. I mean, they can see that they got this fan base here. You don't see that with if suppose the Carolina Hurricanes move. I don't think 21 years later they're going to make a Carolina Hurricanes license plate. I think there's something to that you see that Connecticut wants its own team, and having the license plate was a way to keep the logo alive. Now people be driving on the street and see it. They will say, boy, is that the old Whalers logo? So, and we really wanted to honor Peter Good, the creator of the logo, who we've had on our show multiple times and in events. He came up with this original logo kind of, out of the blue. And I still think it's the greatest sports logo in sports. If people look at the Whalers logo, you'll notice that the negative stage between the tail and the W is an H. It forms an H for Hartford. So it's a really cool logo, and I think that alone, if that logo wasn't as cool as it was, as sought after, is wanted, it's still a top seller in the NHL today. We've talked to the NHL. It's a top 10 seller, even of active teams. It's outselling. So that logo, to get that on a license plate, and now, it'll keep the dream alive a little longer.
That's interesting you bring up sort of the logo stuff. We recently had on our show a guy named Waylon Moore, who was known for creating the iconic New York Cosmos soccer logo, as well as a couple of other soccer and sports stuff. The Atlanta Braves, he was very active in their uniform design and stuff. And that's interesting that you would have somebody like Peter Good on your show, because we sort of delved into this in our previous episode, but it is absolutely a very strong tributary to our little journeys and our pursuits, right? These are logos that for whatever reasons somehow lose ownership or trademark status and that kind of stuff. These are gigs for graphic artists and other creative folks out there, right? A new team comes into town. They want logo designs and concepts and stuff, and lo and behold, something gets chosen. And then, as certainly as we see in today's modern era, right, those logos, to your point earlier, right, the logos are far beyond just imagery and colors, right? They actually start to stand for something, right? They start to stand for community pride or passion for a team, even as to your point, maybe long after the team is gone, right? People just affix their memories and their passion and their love and the lore around that sort of physical imagery of a logo. And I'm just curious as to who owns the intellectual property to that logo. Is that the NHL? Is it now the Hurricanes? Does Peter even have a stake in that anymore? Did it fall out of ownership into sort of the public domain? How did you manage that minefield?
Well, when you look at, and Peter Good was a tremendous guest. He brought all his sketches on of his original mock-ups of this logo. Some of them prior to the finished product, which thankfully he went with because it turned out to be so awesome, was actually they used the Sailors Arch in Hartford, which is notorious here in Hartford, called the Arch. And he had these large, almost like spears on it. And someone said, well, if you love the Whalers, you don't want a harpoon. You want something that symbolizes that you love your Whalers. And that's where he came up with his other logo. To answer your question, though, he still owns the copyright to the original logo.
No kidding.
The NHL owns but the NHL owns the trademark, which carries heavier value to it. Yeah. So they are now selling it through Reebok, and you see it out there everywhere. Unfortunately, when the Carolina Hurricanes left Hartford, and that was one of the things they had to leave behind as part of the contract. Well, the city and state did not renew that, so we lost out on that. So then, of course, the NHL scooped it up, and now, thankfully, it's still out there. And, like I said, I work at a local university, and it's hilarious. These kids these students are so young, they don't remember the Whalers. But they'll wear the T-shirt, they'll wear the hat, because, like you said, it's a territorial thing. It's our team. And they will wear it because it has Hartford on it, it has the H, it has the Whalers. It's ours. They don't exist today, but, that's only for people who don't believe, unlike us. We totally believe our hockey club is coming back one day. So you see it. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, there was a NBA Finals about 5 years ago, and Snoop Dogg was wearing a blue cardigan sweater with the Whalers logo on it. So, it's interesting who wears it. What's her name? Fox. Megan Fox had it on a T-shirt out in Hollywood. So, all these people love the logo. I don't know why Megan Fox would wear it. Maybe she likes Hartford. I don't know. Maybe she likes the Whalers. So, it lives on, and Peter Good, being the guy he is, comes back all the time whenever we invite him, and we talk about that logo again and how instrumental, you look at All-Stars or three stars of the game at the end of a hockey game. Well, Peter Good ranks right up there as probably the number one star here at Hartford, just for the logo, not the player, but the player who created such an iconic logo.
Yeah, and we originally, this is one of the things that people don't know about the license plate was, there's two Whaler logos. One has a silver background, and that started in 1992. But Peter Good is responsible for the original logo, which was just the blue and the green over white. And we wanted that logo on the license plates. However, I think the NHL was more comfortable with using the logo that they manufacture, and that's the one with the silver background. So, we wanted to get that first logo, but just to get any logo on a plate, I think when we started this, we thought, hey, we'll roll the dice with this. But, I mean, just the fact that it's done, it's out there, and people are ordering them, it's just fantastic. And I think I'm sure the NHL got a hold of it. And, I don't know if it's linked at all, but Tom Dundon, the new owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, shortly thereafter the release of the plates, which was a national story, which we were overwhelmed. We had our name in Sports Illustrated, and I have no athletic ability at all. But, so we were just amazed at how well it took off and how many people, have already bought just a couple of months. We got a couple hundred plates sold. And, that it's really the logo, I think, is what drives all the success and the memories.
All right, well, let's talk about Carolina for a second. I hate to start. I hate to sort of go right to the end of the story, so to speak. But, the team obviously, the team obviously left for supposedly greener pastures in 1990, I guess was the 1997-98 season. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so we don't have to go through the torturous history of that, but I'm certainly like to go back and sort of get some sense of how you what was going on at that time that sort of made that happen. But let's go to the new ownership. So tell our listeners sort of what sort of has transpired over the last number of months. It's my understanding, tell me if I have this right, is that there's almost been sort of I wouldn't even call it a détente, but almost a recognition that there actually was a history to this Carolina team before they moved to Raleigh, right? And almost sort of an opening of the floodgates to remember and to put Hartford Whaler programming, if you will, into the games and inject it into the history of that franchise where it wasn't existing before. Is that right?
Well, that's an opinion. I believe that Mr. Dundon, who obviously is a very successful businessman, is looking at it from a business aspect. I don't believe, and again, he can correct me if he's wrong, he's doing it to look at the history. I think he's looking at it as this can make me some money. He can, if in fact he is memorializing that part of his club came from Hartford, good for him. I give him credit. I don't think that's the fact. I think the fact is he saw the license plate thing. He saw the national recognition. He saw it going to Canada and everywhere else. We were covered by some Canadian sports outlets as well. I think he's taking the opportunity to make some money. And you know what? He can. As of right now, we have found that there's a public relations firm, I believe, out of Delaware that actually owns that trademark for that logo. But because he's part of the NHL has given him permission to sell T-shirts for $35 at Carolina Hurricanes games. And he has sold quite a few of them.
Yeah.
So, again, we reach out. I got a text from someone who lives down in Carolina the other day that his neighbor actually looks at our Facebook page, the Whalers Brigade, and he thinks it's absolutely phenomenal that this Whalers page exists. I don't know if he's a Whaler fan. I don't know if he's a transplant from Connecticut and he lives down there. But, it's interesting that Tom Dundon, the new owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, is embracing the Hartford Whalers logo and merchandise. I hope it's for the right reasons. I think it's a business thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just wanted to add that, it's interesting because we do keep so die-hard track of everything. There's an interesting stat that came about, and we talked about Carolina being greener pastures. And, yeah, they did win a Stanley Cup in 2006. But over the last two seasons, the Carolina Hurricanes have drawn less people than the Whalers did in their final season. A lot of people don't know. They think that the Hartford was not a market that supported its team, and we really contest that strongly because – in Hartford's final year, 93% of the Civic Center was sold out. They didn't make the playoffs 5 years straight, but they sold out 93% of the building. There were dark times in the early to mid 90s and the early to mid 80s, where the team was winning an average of 28 games a season. And so, yeah, you did get some of those attendances that were down in the 11,000 to 12,000. But, you know, it's really hard to get people to come out and support a team that's, you know, not playing well at all. The Whalers didn't have many glory days, but when they did in the late 80s, they outdrew Boston in the 80s. And people don't even know this back here. The Whalers outdrew Boston 4 out of 10 years in the 80s. You know, that's pretty impressive for a small market team.
Well, and it's, you know, it's not a small market per se, because if you truly sort of expand the geography a little bit, obviously there's overlap with certainly Boston and count them, 3 teams in the New York metropolitan area, right? And you know, so having grown up in the northern New Jersey area and sort of seeing the arrival of the Devils, for example, which arguably could have been seen as being one team too many in an already 2-team, maybe arguably 3-team metropolitan area, if you included the Whalers prior to the Devils' arrival. But so I guess let's maybe skate, if you will, no pun intended, perhaps pun intended, into maybe sort of the rationale, maybe at the time, as to why the team wound up moving. We could talk about the particulars in a minute, but I guess I'm looking more for the overall tableau, I guess, of the NHL, because you're bringing up, right, the attendance issues, you know, and I track on Twitter empty seats picks, you know, and revel in sort of empty seats and low attendances and stuff. But the NHL is a very interesting sort of thing, right? Because, you know, and people have their love and disdain for Gary Bettman, but, you know, Phoenix, right, is been basically a very challenged franchise over its short history. You know, the migration, if you will, of teams from Canada to seemingly non-hockey markets, Raleigh probably being a head scratcher when it was first proposed, Florida, Tampa Bay. I mean, no disrespect to these markets, but you know, it seems like it's been a challenge to kind of bring hockey literally to these markets. However, now you throw in a monkey wrench into all of it with this crazy phenomenon of the Vegas Golden Knights, right? Which just seems to be a complete aberration to what arguably would have been, I guess, most sports fans would have said, a stretch to bring hockey into places that hasn't normally embraced hockey. There's a lot to unpack in that question, but maybe a little bit of a sense of where do you think the NHL is right now, and does Hartford even have a chance given, I don't know, Seattle, it seems like, wants to pay even more for a franchise. Do you think there's a shot there for Hartford to sort of get back into the mix, or is the NHL kind of just too far gone and it's sort of money grab for new franchises?
Well, I think to answer the first part of your question, you know, there are a fair amount of people here in the Hartford area that do not like Gary Bettman. We've tried to educate them into the fact that Gary Bettman is the commissioner of the NHL. He is the talking head of the NHL. You have 32 board of governors for each of these hockey clubs. They vote on where they want clubs to go. They vote on who should expand. They vote on everything that has to be done. And Gary Bettman reports on their behalf. So, you know, for people to say they don't like Gary Bettman is only reporting what the owners want or do not want. I believe what happened was Gary Bettman came up with an idea that he thought the Sun Belt needed hockey. Well, that's not entirely true, because as we've seen, Florida has struggled. They've made some really interesting land development bargains with Fort Lauderdale and the Broward County area, and they're still not drawing. Yeah, they were close to making the playoffs, but they didn't. Again, their attendance is down. You move out to Phoenix, like you were talking about, in the Arizona. They're not drawing. They have no place to go in next year or the year after because Glendale doesn't want them. There was a big battle this last couple of years with the city of Glendale. We were told last year that there are 3 NHL teams that have a line of credit through the NHL. One of them being Carolina, and that's before the ownership change. Mr. Kamanos got into some legal trouble with his, I believe it was both of his sons were suing him for $105 million because of him taking money from their trust funds. That must have been a heck of a holiday dinner. But, when you look at, the experiment, and I'll call it that, of the Sun Belt, I don't think it's fared very well. And yes, there is a monkey wrench in Las Vegas, and I'll be the first one to admit that publicly. I was on our TV show saying all the casinos would be giving away tickets. We had a radio host send us an email on our YouTube page and said, no, we have a fan base. And you know what? I'll eat my words. They have a fan base. They have a rabid fan base, and they have one hell of a hockey club right now. So you know what? I'll take off both my shoes and shove my foot in my mouth and take it out because I was wrong.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that.
Think a lot of
radio host.
Fair to say, I think a lot of people were wrong, right? I don't think anybody's nobody.
I told you, I predicted them to be a 28, 30 win team, and boy, it was not like that. And it's interesting for us too because some of those Vegas Golden Knights are playing in the AHL here in Hartford. Jonathan Marchessault, Oscar Lindbergh, those are guys that are winning games for the Vegas Knights that are playing here in Hartford for the Rangers farm team, which is a completely different aspect of Hartford hockey. But just to go back to your point about the NHL, do we think they have interest in here? And I'm going to tell you yes, because we've been working on this a lot. There's an Excel Center plan, the Hartford Civic Center, to renovate the whole building. And a lot of people don't know this either. The Hartford Civic Center footprint is larger than Madison Square Garden. It's larger than TD Bank North. It's a bigger arena square foot wise. And we know this because the people that are running the plan to renovate the building, they're called SCI, which is Stadium Consultants International. Their head architect, his name is Murray Bainan. He is the guy that did the renovation work for Madison Square Garden. He also did work on the LA Forum. He's a top NHL, vendor, and we've spoken to him many times as he's presented this plan to renovate the building. And I just don't think the NHL would. They might be saying like, hey, well, don't spend your time in Hartford working on this renovation plan. We have other cities like Seattle, maybe Kansas City, Hamilton, Quebec. But to have. That's got to be one of their top vendors, a guy that did MSG on the fly. If you know that, Madison Square Garden was really renovated without closing the building, and that's the same plan here. Building a second concourse and building amenities for the Hartford Civic Center would happen over the summer months, and then you would still be allowed to play hockey during the winter months. Now, would a team move here and deal with renovation work? That's plausible. We always look at Phoenix, too, and we've got to say Glendale, because don't forget they're playing about 20-25 minutes west of Phoenix, and they have their attendance issues. But I think the NHL looks at like Phoenix is a ninth or 10th largest media market in America. It's hard to leave a market that's that big. I think that's what happened to the Islanders. The Islanders were looking for a place to play this year, and in the last couple of years they were looking for a new arena, and they ended up finding one in Belmont. But they were just never going to leave New York. It's the largest market in the United States. And we never thought they were going to leave. But I think a team like Phoenix, a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, maybe even the Florida Panthers, those are teams that could think about moving if they can lower their expenditures and their losses. If they can find a way to make it work in Hartford, I don't see why they won't do it. Like I said, it's also one of the richest markets in the nation. So, I don't think there's an issue with the ability to make money here in Hartford.
And back to your other question about Seattle, that's like the perfect storm. You have some great investors. They're going to redo the Key Arena. And one of those investors is Jerry Bruckheimer. He's a TV producer. I mean, he's got all the money in the world. So, we're looking for investors here in Hartford. But in order to be on the radar and marketable, we have to have the XL Center done to modern NHL standards.
Well, it also, you're alluding to it. We're talking now, lots happened, right, since the team left. Back in the late 90s, right? And you see this with Major League Soccer. You see this with a lot of leagues, MLS in particular, because they're still kind of, still in that sort of growth stage, right? A lot of this is backhandedly, or maybe not so unobvious, is real estate, right? It's a real estate play. You see these sort of mixed use developments. You see what happened with the Braves, right? Moving literally from downtown Atlanta to Gwinnett County, and now basically, in their own little sort of park, which is surrounded by office buildings and restaurants and sort of like a little mini theme park, right? It's almost that you see Cincinnati in the USL being sort of pulled around by MLS, and they can't play in Nippert Stadium, which is the University of Cincinnati facility, and sold out at 40, 50,000 people at a game. Apparently, that's not good enough because it's not a soccer specific stadium with its own revenue streams and such. it's clear, and you look at the money around Seattle, right? That's being bandied about is how much that franchise would cost, right? My last check was $400 or $500. It's an astronomical amount of money, you would think, given all the shenanigans going on in Phoenix and those places. So, is the money there to do that, right?
Well, when you look at Seattle, they're willing to make a play. You remember 6 months ago, though, or almost a year ago, their statement about rebuilding the Key Arena was they wanted number one tenant to be the NBA. They want their Seattle Supersonics back. And the NHL did not want to be second fiddle to that. Well, a year later, all of a sudden we have these investors, and all of a sudden the NHL is top fiddle. Yeah. We heard speculation that Wayne Gretzky was part of that investment group as well. So if Wayne Gretzky's involved, you know that it's a win-win because, who the hell is going to turn down Wayne Gretzky? Nobody. And, when you look at Hartford, the unique thing about having the XL Center here in Hartford is not only do we have a potential for an NHL team, we also share the building with UConn men, UConn women, UConn hockey. The basketball teams obviously over the years have become national champions. We bring in full houses for the women's and men's basketball games, and the state makes money on that. When the Wolfpack play, we probably play an average of about $2,500 a game, if that. AHL hockey is not. The problem is with AHL hockey, as much as they're fun to watch and it's great having youngsters before they make it up the NHL, once you are a major league city, it's very difficult to go back to a minor league city. Yeah. And, I think a lot of people still have a bad taste in their mouth that we're not a major league city. I do blame, and I will say this, I blame the legislature, the governor, for not actively going out there to attract an NHL club to come here. The problem is you can beat the drum all you want, but if you don't have a facility to house an NHL team, you're not going to be able to market it.
All right, just when it was getting interesting, let's bring this to a grinding halt, shall we? Just kidding. We got to pay the bills around here, and our friends at Audible have been very helpful in attempting to allow us to pay some of those bills, and we want to call them out now and remind you that a free audiobook download is yours for the taking, and also a free 1-month subscription to the service of Audible at audibletrial.com/goodseats. Again, audibletrial.com/goodseats for your free 1-month trial of the Audible service, and most interestingly, a free audiobook download for you to enjoy. 180,000 titles and growing every day to choose from, and there's absolutely no excuse to not find at least one title amongst that cavernous selection available to you that you won't find to be enjoyable and good for the soul, including a couple of books that might be interesting to our audience. And yes, some new ones, frankly, that I'm finally listening to. One that I'm listening to right now is by Carson Cunningham. It's narrated by Paul Boehmer, and it's called Underbelly Hoops, Adventures in the CBA, a.k.a. the Crazy Basketball Association, which is really, of course, about the Continental Basketball Association, which for many years was sort of this ragtag minor league of the NBA. And it's a book I'm about 2 chapters into right now, and hopefully maybe a guest will get for a future episode. Also, in my queue, next up, is another guest that I'd like to get, and her book that she wrote is also narrated by her. Her name is Jeannie Buss, and of course, Jeannie is the daughter of Jerry Buss, of course, the wildly successful founder of the Los Angeles Lakers and the LA Forum, and Jeannie is clearly today the brains behind the Los Angeles Lakers today. She and her brothers were active, of course, in things like, along with her father, World Team Tennis, the Major Indoor Soccer League with the LA Lasers, all kinds of stuff. So her book is next on my list. That's called Laker Girl, and that too is available on Audible. And again, it's one of the many thousands of titles that you can choose from when you go to audibletrial.com/goodseats. And again, you too can get your free audiobook download to give it a try, perhaps one of those 2, or perhaps one of the other 180,000 titles available to you as well. Give it a try, audibletrial.com/goodseats. Thanks for listening, and back to our conversation. also, though, about media, right? So the television, right, is, there's no doubt that one of the strongest undercurrents to this sort of amazing expansion plan, ill-fated as it might be in some of the actual arenas in the Southwest or in the Sun Belt, right, is extending and expanding a national television or include Canada footprint, right, for, which is arguably the biggest revenue source, right, at least today, and the television industry is certainly going through its changes. But make no mistake, sports revenue from television contracts certainly, is even more outsized than it was even when the team was still in Hartford. And, unfortunately, Hartford is not a major market by television standards. Plus, it also has the added burden of being sandwiched between two major ones in Boston and the New York City metropolitan area.
Yeah. When the Whalers were here, we had a channel called Sports Channel New England, and they covered us. You also had a competitor called TV 38, which is now Nesson, that broadcasts the Bruins. And then later on, obviously, MSG came into the cable market. So you had a lot of these things going on. Some years ago, when there was a lot of talk of bringing the NHL back, the Fox network talked about being a regional broadcast of an NHL team if they came to Hartford. So yes, to your point, yes, the TV market is what would really benefit a team coming back to this area. And, as well as, of course, our local channels covering hockey more than they currently do. And that's another irritating thing that I go through constantly is, they'll show UConn, but you'll get about 3 seconds of the Wolfpack game or the UConn hockey game. They really have to capitalize on the hockey part of it. They've gotten away with it. When the Whalers were here, they covered them. They actually showed them on some of the local channels when it wasn't broadcast nationally on ESPN. But that's something that, if we have the opportunity to get a hockey club back here, that's going to be a big feather in our cap, getting the TV revenue for not only the team, but for the state.
Right, and I think the NHL got interested more in Hartford in 2014. UConn joined Hockey East, and they were it's a startup team in the new league, and Hockey East is a monster league for college hockey. And the first game, they had to cap the attendance in the building at 8,089, and they actually sold out and were turning people away. And even though UConn finished, ninth in the conference in their first year, they were first in attendance, and they're outdrawing Boston College, Boston University, Merrimack, Maine, all of these colleges, and they were outdrawing them, pretty mightily. I think the first season, they drew somewhere around 5,300 per game. So to have, finally UConn supporting it, because UConn hockey they've been pretty good. They've been competitive. They had their best season this last season, but they certainly haven't gone deep into the playoffs or anything. But the fact that you got Hartford showing promotion for, and showing up for a team it's kind of mediocre. So I think they saw that. I think that the interest in that is because UConn was like Hartford's team. They play Brass Bonanza. They do this. Whereas the AHL hockey, it is tough, they say, to go from steak to hamburger, but you're going from the NHL to the AHL. And on top of that, you have the New York Ranger affiliate, which not everybody's in love with. It's a little bit like if you could imagine the Chicago Blackhawks moved and the Detroit Red Wings put their AHL club in Chicago. I mean, how well is that going to draw?
Well, I mean, given the contours of the state of Connecticut in sort of that media landscape, right? I'm wondering now if a Hartford were a serious conversation for a relocation, which I got to think at this point is it's more about relocation than it is about expansion, right? I mean, you got how many teams now? It's getting to be crazy big.
Yeah, we're set up for relocation more than expansion is just too expensive. I mean, as we talked about the $400-500 million, you need to find an owner who wants to move to kind of hedge his bets, thinking that he'll think the greener pastures are here. And we think, we've caught wind from Jeremy Jacobs, who's the Bruins owner, and he said, I would rather have a team in Hartford than in Phoenix because I have to fly a plane to Phoenix twice a year where I can just take the bus. And the Rangers have said, if the NHL comes back, we will move our AHL affiliate, no problem. If the NHL comes back. So, I think my point here is the Board of Governors vote is if they're paying out of their own pocket to subsidize these teams that have lines of credit and are struggling, if they know that there's a solid owner and a solid building and a solid TV market, I think they'd all vote for a move to Hartford, and we believe that. And we think we have an edge over Quebec. Quebec is going to be more rabid. They're probably going to sell more tickets, but we know the TV market here in Hartford is better. And we also know that it's tough to put a team in Canada because you got to deal with the money issue and the transfer, and you lose 25 cents on every dollar. So all player contracts are in American dollars. I think ownership or a team moving to Quebec, at least at this point financially and at the economic times we are in, is less likely. And the Seattle thing, the Key Arena has some sightline issues, so that's going to take a couple of years before Seattle can actually be ready for a team. We think that the XL Center can be ready in 2 years. So it all depends on if people are looking. We know our governor that we have now has been very active in drawing teams. Have you heard about the letters? One of the letters that he sent to the Carolina Hurricanes offering them to come play a game in Hartford, a regular season game, he released actually through us, knowing that we would be able to get them out through. So, yeah.
And the other thing is he sent a letter to the Islanders and inviting them to come and play here for a couple games while the Belmont Arena is built. Of course, it went back and forth, and eventually the Islanders turned down that offer.
Yeah, that's interesting because that actually was going to lead me to my question about and you maybe addressed it before, right? So I was wondering if Boston and or those New York franchises actually would welcome a franchise back, because it would seem that they would probably want to claim some kind of modern version of, if you will, territorial rights, given the absence of the team in the last 20 plus years.
Yeah, and that has come up in conversation with some people we have been talking to. What eventually would happen is whoever the owner is going to pay out of his pocket, basically to grab those TV rights. You can cut our state right in half, basically, right about the Middletown area, which is about 15 minutes south of Hartford, or 10 minutes south of Hartford, and that's the New York-Boston line. Quinnipiac did an actual poll on this, so it's kind of interesting that the New York-Boston line is right at about 15 minutes south of Hartford in Middletown. So I would see if a new owner came in here with a club, he would be paying off the Bruins and the Islanders or Rangers or Bulls for their TV revenue that we would then gobble up with an NHL team relocating here.
So this, when I hear you guys talk, right, this sounds, and I'm trying to separate the passion from the reality and the chances, right? When I hear you guys talk, right, I hear that this is a very real time, of the moment, present and very alive conversation, not a wallowing in nostalgia kind of thing. And gee, wouldn't it be cool if, right? Right.
And it's because, we like I said, I always bring this up there, we're just a couple of guys at a TV show, but we presented an image. We're very factual about what we do know. And we admit when there's, certain things like, Hartford being a smaller market compared to other larger markets, we get that. But when you look at the whole thing about it is, we talked to the Capital Region Development Authority is an arm of the government here, the state government, and they're trying to renovate the XL Center to make it NHL ready. And I told you they have those vendors they bring in. The governor's been very active. So I think it's a fluid situation, and I think it's a potential thing, but it all depends. And we've been stuck on this in Hartford for a while now. Is if you get the building to be NHL ready, then that opens the door for people to really look at Hartford as a serious thing. But it seems like, $250 million is a lot of money to renovate an arena. But we've been assured that a renovated $250 million arena would be just as appreciable in value as a brand new arena if it was built. So, and that would be $500 million for a brand new arena. So we're looking at this arena being NHL ready for $250 million. And then you take into the fact that you've got, we get support at these events. We've had season ticket drives, people signing up, the license plates, all that stuff. So, yeah, you're right. The standpoint that there's not anything that we're specifically able to grab onto, but there's enough discussion. And a couple of years ago, we heard that the Phoenix Coyotes made a preliminary third-party reach out to Hartford to just kind of say, hey, where's your building at? Where are you guys at? So the NHL does take a peek. And, I just want to make this one point, too. If you look at Gary Bettman, and we talked about him being a mouthpiece, But when Seattle came out and said, "Oh, we're doing this," and Gary Bettman came out and said to Seattle, Seattle, you're nowhere near ready. And then Quebec came up and said, "Hey, we're building a brand new arena," a couple of years ago, and Bettman said, "Don't build it on our account." Now you have the governor of the state of Connecticut who's sending letters to the Islanders. He's sending letters to the Carolina Hurricanes. Some tweets out there about bring back the NHL. And Gary Bettman is very, very silent. Now, why is that? That's the question I always ask myself when I go to bed at night.
Why? So who do you worry about most in terms of markets competing with you? You've mentioned a couple, but you know the troubled markets, right? And you know the NHL's, and we've seen this in our previous conversations with lots of leagues, both past and present, right? The interest in, at least temporarily, if not long-term, propping up those weakest links to keep that national footprint, that television revenue thing, sort of, that multi-market kind of thing sort of going. What markets do you worry about competitively, assuming that Hartford is in that mix, which it's clear there's no shortage of passion to keep it in the mix, and arguably your TV show certainly does that by keeping it alive. You mentioned Quebec. We mentioned Seattle. Give us a sense of the reality check based on your perceptions of Hartford versus other quote unquote possible franchise locations.
We have heard Houston was brought up in the last 4 to 6 months, which is a great. You have the Houston Arrows, huge market. That would be I think if they have an arena ready to play in, they could get in the way. Again, for us, Quebec is always sitting there, and Peter, in my opinion, we share. We believe Hartford and Quebec should be the next two teams brought back into the NHL because of the blunder that they took them out of the NHL. Of course, Gary Bettman is never going to say that his Sunbelt experiment has failed. We'll tell him, no, it failed. But, I think the major competitor, Seattle being out of the picture, because as far as I'm concerned, they're good to go with their expansion bid. And I think they said they should be on track for 2020. The competitor I see is going to be Houston or Quebec if their dollar balances out with the U.S. dollar. Other than that, I don't see too many other people. And remember, now they have so heavily stacked the Western Conference with now Las Vegas and potentially Seattle that they're going to have to bring a team or create a team over on the East Coast to balance out all these divisions or move a team. And, where are you going to put it? Well, the only logical place is on the East Coast where there's money.
And which franchises then do you see as being most susceptible or open-minded to various entreaties? You mentioned a couple, but give me your sort of your hot list that you have on your board, your draft board, so to speak. What markets do you think are most ready for the siren song, if you will, to come back to Hartford?
Yeah. I think the first one that we think of is, and it's only because of just the way the contract's broken. If you follow the Glendale issue with Phoenix, they do these 1-year contracts, and then they say, they tried to go to Tempe and do something with the Arizona State Devils, and they tried to go to Scottsdale and look at an issue there, and it just seems like everywhere they go, they cannot get a solid arena. They already were in Phoenix. They even have had talks, with going back and partnering with the Suns and the NBA. And that doesn't seem to work out. And now they have a 1-year contract. They had a 1-year contract last year. So, it's either, they're at the point where it's either like they got to, really hunker down or just move the team. So, I think Phoenix is up there in the minds of a team that can move. Again, it's another large market. But the second team I think we look at is we do look at Carolina. And we do look at this owner who does have to stay in Carolina for the next 4 to 5 seasons. But as we know, contracts are broken like dishes in a restaurant because the Whalers, if you remember, left here when they still had a year left on their contract. So teams can move. And if Dundon happens to, build a platform where he can show losses, which is what we thought Carmanos did here, where he kind of tried to make it show that he was losing money in order to make it easier for him to leave. that was his mistake, in our findings. But we believe that Carolina would be, a candidate to relocate. Maybe it's not Hartford, but to relocate, sure. And I also think the Florida Panthers, you said you follow the empty seats on Twitter. They certainly get enough of those pictures, in Sunrise there. So Florida is, kind of an issue you kind of think of. And, completely off the topic we're talking about, I got to say one thing about the playoffs going on now is everyone in Hartford is pulling for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's that WHA tie. Everyone's really pulling for the Winnipeg Jets. We actually got great responses from the Winnipeg market, rooting for us. We're kind of rooting for them. We're kind of sister franchises. So we wouldn't want Winnipeg to move, but we'll certainly take the Phoenix Coyotes, who used to be the Winnipeg Jets.
And another thing to add, when you look at the statistics on viewership during the first and now we're into the second round of their playoffs, Hartford was number 8 nationwide.
Yeah.
We were at like 60%.
Yeah.
The ratings were outstanding for the New Haven, Hartford area. And remember, New Haven's only about 30 minutes away from Hartford. So to be ranked in the top 10 in the nation, we were number 8, a solid number 8. And we outdrew other major cities for playoff hockey.
Yeah, I mean, it would seem that plus the natural, rivalries just within just sort of that region, right? I mean, you mentioned the bus trips before between Boston or New York, and the
right.
natural rivalries that can be reinvented, so to speak, by versus trying to create them out of whole cloth with an expansion franchise or. And actually
right.
Winnipeg, which I think is interesting, right? Because I don't want to say everything old is new again, but right, I mean Winnipeg, right? Obviously one of the WHA franchises you're alluding to, and obviously the New England Whalers being part of the WHA in its earliest of years. Winnipeg's not the largest market either, right? Obviously hockey in Canada, right? So there's something to be said for having a passionate, almost ready-made fan base, right? Assuming that the TV stuff can be figured out, assuming the arena thing can get figured out. It seems to me like you guys have done a very good job of trying to at least keep not only hope alive, but trying to sort of convince people on the outside that there is a market of fertile soil tilling to be had again. And wouldn't it be ironic if somebody like the Carolina Hurricanes decided to round trip and come back home, so to speak, right? Given
that would be that would be sweet justice. But the other thing is, you have to remember when Winnipeg built their brand new arena up there, it's only 15,000 seats. So you're not seeing these giant monstrous arenas anymore. You're seeing arenas that are 15,000 seats. Granted, for us guys that don't make lots of money, it's going to be expensive to go see a hockey game. The other thing is the Barclays Center is only just under 16,000 seats. So, the XL Center in Hartford, the current plan is to boost it up to 19,000 seats so they can start attracting some major championship in the collegiate sports. The Final Fours, the regional finals. Next year in Hartford, where we have the basketball regionals coming here for 3 days in Hartford. That's a big deal. And, that means other people have faith in Hartford. It's not just the NHL, but it's college basketball. The NCAA believes Hartford is a viable market for attracting a lot of money. We talk about the NHL, and that's, of course, our dream, but also looking at it as a major league sports location. When you're bringing in people from all over the region for basketball, and we know how well basketball draws, hockey is always going to be number 4 because you have baseball, you have football, you have basketball, and then you have hockey. But we have a unique fan base that enjoys all of that, and the basketball really draws here well in the state of Connecticut.
All right, a couple other questions, and I'll let you guys get back to your lives after, because you've been on the air and you're now on the air with me, and so I appreciate you staying up late East Coast time to hear my little silly questions. So
no problem.
One's a real, specific question, more about geography and arenas and stuff. And this is a bit of my ignorance, but I certainly see it on the concert circuit and other sports and stuff. What of the Mohegan Sun Arena as a viable or potential viable place, right? Because we've seen it with the WNBA franchise going there versus, say, somewhere else in Connecticut. Or is that a challenge, a problem, not even an issue for a franchise. It is a facility, no doubt, and a quality one at that.
It is, and we've actually looked into this a couple of years ago too, because there was talk about the AHL team maybe playing other places, and the issue with Mohegan is it's a 10,000 seat arena, but they have absolutely no ice making equipment. So I don't know how much that would cost. I know that the XL Center, the Hartford Civic Center here, had the ice making machine and the cooling system done for their entire arena, which was like about $3 to $4 million. That was the first time that was done in 40 years. So right now Mohegan doesn't have it.
And that's an NHL ready ice sheet that was put down.
Right.
And they just replaced the dashers and the boards, which are all NHL ready. When they redid the ice sheet specifically, this is about the time that the Barclays Center was having issues with their ice. They put PVC piping in instead of stainless steel piping in because they wanted to save money. Well, that's not NHL approved. So Peter and I went back and forth during our show, and we said, how could the NHL put a hockey club, an NHL hockey club, into an arena that's not NHL ready? And then turn around, and the Hartford Civic Center, the XL Center, said, well, that made our decision really simple. Yeah. We put stainless steel piping in, and now we're NHL ready.
Yeah.
Ice sheet and boards and dashers, all we have to do is get our concourse ready. But to answer your question, it is a competition between the XL Center and Mohegan Sun specifically for concert venues. The XL Center has secured some great concerts, 7 concerts this upcoming year that are huge. We're having Elton John come to town. Def Leppard and Journey are starting their world tour here in Hartford, Connecticut. Fleetwood Mac just announced they're coming here. So, Hartford's not dead. Hartford still has a great entertainment value with the restaurants and venues around the XL Center for people to visit. Last year alone, the XL Center attracted 600,000 people. What we're trying to educate people here in Hartford is when the Whalers were here, they attracted 600,000 people alone to Hartford.
Yeah, very interesting. So, okay, let me wrap up with maybe two questions. One more general and one specific, and you'll see why I waited till the end for that in a second. What is it about this franchise and hockey in general and the quite palpable interest in not only keeping the memory alive, but this, some would call it a dream, some would call it it's just a matter of time, return to NHL hockey in the Hartford/Connecticut marketplace? Why is it so visceral, say, versus, I don't know, Atlanta, where they've failed twice with NHL franchises, et cetera, versus, say, other markets?
Well, I think the number one thing, speaking personally, is it irritated me. They took our team. They took our team and what we had here in Hartford. It was nothing the fans did. The fans to this day are just as passionate about their Whalers as they were 21 years ago. That is the number one thing that is going to bring back an NHL club here. Yes, we need the building. But besides that, it is the Hartford Whaler fan base here in the state of Connecticut that love their Whalers. And to me, that's the most irritating thing, is the fans did absolutely nothing wrong, and they were taken from us by a guy who thought it was going to be greener on the other side of the septic tank. And, my feeling is that's what's going to get us through.
Yeah.
Peter and I, like you said, we've done this show for 7 years. The people that follow us are just as passionate. Some people call us delusional. Some people call us it's a pipe dream. But you know what? Until the day I die, I'm fighting for this club to come back. And you know what? Some guy came up to me on the street and said, well, you're going to live a long life. And I wanted to give him a sock. But you know what? That's what Peter and I believe. And I'll let Peter answer his side of it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the fact that Hartford has got a chip on its shoulder. Being squished between Boston and New York. That's what you hear everyone saying, I'm going to Boston, I'm going to New York. Or, the Bruins fans were brutal to us. The Ranger fans were brutal to us. They would occupy some of the upper levels in the concourse of the XL Center. There were sometimes some rough nights there. But Hartford loves taking on the big guy. And I can't put it any better than 1987, April 23rd. Kevin Dineen in Game 6 in the second round of the Adams Division Final goes around Larry Robinson, a Hall of Famer, beats rookie future Hall of Famer Patrick Waugh, wins Game 6, and all it did was Hartford got to a seventh game with the eventual Stanley Cup winning Montreal Canadiens in 1986. And so that game today, everybody still remembers that day, April 23rd. They remember that, and I don't know if you ever heard about this, but we had 40,000 people in Hartford for a Hartford Whalers parade. When they lost to the Canadiens in 7 games, they threw a parade in the city for a second-round loser. I don't know of any other NHL city, NBA city, MLB city that has done that.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it also feels like that it also feels more pure, right? When you versus the sort of, shall we say, artificiality of plopping a team, let's say, in the Sun Belt, right? No disrespect to Houston, but certainly Phoenix, which has proven challenging, right? Certainly Florida / Miami / Fort Lauderdale, which has proven challenging, right? The transplants of these, you can't just artificially manufacture passion and interest, a fan base, right? You could make the argument that Major League Soccer has done a bit of that. There's soccer purists who kind of don't like sort of the centralized franchise kind of thing. And frankly, I think some of the more successful franchises in MLS, not that it's a direct correlation, but, are the ones that have embraced their heritage, right? And North American Soccer League, the old Bicentennials haven't come back, but the Sounders of Seattle have, and Portland Timbers have. And, so those, right. and that's not artificial. That actually existed. And it's great to see that, people who currently own those brands and franchises recognize it and start to tap into it. Now, for whatever ulterior motives, business or whatever, but at least it's something to go back to and have an historical lineage to, right? And soccer in particular, right? Not a very strong, heritage in this country. Yes, it has been, but it's not as deeply rooted, say, as baseball or whatever, or even hockey for that matter. So kudos to you, right? For keeping that spirit alive, because arguably, you've got something there that not many markets can replicate. And that is, and again, Vegas, aberration, probably, right? But in some respects, it's maybe not, because, how many professional sports teams are there? None, right? And I'm not sure how the Raiders thing will play out. I mean, that's a whole other ball of wax, right? But, there are actually people who live in Las Vegas, right? And many of them are very working class, supporting a very big entertainment sort of industry there, right? And this is something that they can call their own, right? So why is that any different than what Hartford might have, right? And that it's this, you've got passion, you've got people who are interested, and you've got, sort of that sort of chip on your shoulder, that sort of smaller market thing. You can't manufacture that. That's real and genuine. And you know what? That may be a better environment for the league going forward than trying to manufacture another market to keep television somewhat satiated.
Right. I mean, it really what we have going in our favor is we don't have another professional sports team in our state. Like you said, we're not competing against two other hockey teams like New York is. New York has the Rangers, the Islanders, and even some of the fan base goes to Jersey. So this would be ours all over again, and the whole state would embrace a major league NHL franchise here.
Yeah, and that's a state with 3.5 million people, and 2.3 of that million is within an hour of the XL Center. You're also talking about with the UConn hockey, there are 80,000 UConn alumni within 45 minutes of Hartford. So, they would be probably interested in Whalers too, because I tell you, there's a connection here between UConn and the Whalers. At the time, they were both kind of getting hot. The Whalers in the late 80s, and then UConn started to become nationally recognized in the NCAA when they won the Big East tournament in 1990. So, and then from there they went on, and of course the women in '95, started winning championships. It felt like almost every year. We make great arguments for the fan base, and I don't think that we're telling anybody that the Whalers are coming back tomorrow. But can we build a constructive, reasonable argument that the NHL should be here? I would challenge anybody on it.
All right. Well, I saved the best for last. Here's my last question, right? So there's also something else up your sleeve, right? And that is probably the best ever theme song that was ever connected.
Yeah.
Which
we haven't talked about. That's right.
Right. To not only connected to an NHL franchise, but probably to any sports franchise. And that is, of course, Brass Bonanza. What is it about that song that resonates and maybe a little personal memories and history of that song? Because it's once people hear it, and we will play it. We've played it at the beginning of the show, and we'll probably play it at the end of the show as well. It's iconic, right?
Yeah, and it's something that, as a kid going to Whaler games, you heard the song. I really didn't understand what it was about, where it came from. It's different. It's unique. It blows my mind, and this is funny because Brian Burke was recently in the news. It was working with the Calgary Flames, but saying that we'll see Jesus before the Whalers come back. This is a guy that removed Brass Bonanza in 1992 to a big failure, to the point that people are still upset at him for removing the song. And the song, as you said earlier, you can't manufacture this. It's not like, we kept pushing the song on people. The song lived on. We have all these guys that got their ringtone for their phone, guys that they honk their horns, Brass Bonanza. I mean, we get involved in the St. Patrick's Parade every year, and we have a large contingent of people, and they wear their Whaler jersey simply because they're green. And you can walk down the street St. Patrick's Day when you walk down Asylum Street in Hartford, in the bar section on St. Patrick's Day, you can actually feel like a player because the crowds are so mad screaming for it. We're playing Brass Bonanza, and they're just screaming, "Let's go Whalers!" So, we got some of that video on YouTube of those parades and the people going crazy. But there's something about the song. I think it's because it's ours. It's no one else's. You hear it everywhere. We've heard it at the Olympics. We've heard it at all these other events. They ended up playing it. So I think it was played in Carolina for the first time ever. So that song is going to be living on for as long. And you see today, the Hartford Yargoats, a AA affiliate of the Colorado Rockies, they use that for a home run. The soccer team, they use it for Brass Bonanza for their goals. So everybody gets a catch of it. And when the Connecticut Whale was here, the New York Rangers farm team used to be the Wolfpack. That was called the Connecticut Whale. When they became the Connecticut Whale, they used Brass Bonanza as a goal song, and the attendance jumped over 30%, just because people wanted to hear a goal song. I mean, it's that crazy. But you're right. That's another feather in the cap for the return of the Whale.
And the other thing is, when I was growing up, we would play street hockey in the driveway. We have our little phonograph, where most of the people today have no idea where the phonograph is. And we would play our record, and we have the 45 of the Brass Bonanza. On the other side was the Brawl in the Mall, which was the Minnesota Fighting Saints against the New England Whalers. It was the biggest brawl in hockey history to this day. Yeah. And the funny thing about it is both those teams got on the same plane and flew out back to St. Paul that night. They were just so tired they didn't care. Yeah. But yeah, when you go to the game, I mean, the one game that Peter spoke about earlier that I will remember for the rest of my life, and it's a huge marketing, is when Kevin Dineen beat Patrick Waugh in Game 6 and scored that goal, and that place was off the hook. The song was blaring, the people were screaming, they were clapping, and I stopped clapping as a youngster. And when I stopped clapping, I could feel the building shake. So that building, with that song and that excitement, that is lightning in a bottle. If you want to market the Hartford Whalers, you just got to grab that highlight, and you know what? It sells itself.
And the composer, a guy named Jack Say, well, that was a pseudonym, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, still alive? Have you ever talked to him? I don't know what the story is there.
He just passed away, I believe, within the last year or two. But there was a reporter here for the Hartford Current named Jeff Jacobs who actually reached out to him, and I don't think he knew exactly how popular it was. It was something that he kind of just put together. And it's still interesting. I think it was probably the Barnes family who brought the song in. I can't remember exactly how it all started kicking off. But I tell you, we hear it everywhere. I tell you, it's on phones, on appliances. It was
during the Stanley Cup Finals last year. The Pittsburgh Penguins played it at their arena during the playoff game. The Brass Bonanza played during the Stanley Cup playoffs because someone sent us a video of the Brass Bonanza at the Pittsburgh Penguins playoff game.
I wonder who owns the rights.
Yeah, that's a good question.
You know what? Fenway Park uses it when the Red Sox hit a home run. they have that Connecticut connection, just like I don't think the Yankees have ever used it. But but again, you have that Connecticut connection with Boston, New York. Boston uses it. People have texted me. I'm at the Red Sox. They just played the Whalers song. Yeah. And like Peter said, other places use it as well. It's a riot when you hear it. You're like, can you believe this? Yeah.
It's amazing. You look, not only, assuming the arena and assuming the economics, right? You have a logo, you got the theme song, you got the fans. It seems like you've got a lot of the sort of ingredients ready to go, and I think that's awesome. All right, guys, give me some promo here. What can our fans and our listeners? How can they find more about you? Where can they see excerpts of the show? Give us some social media. Give us all your promotional windup so people can learn more and connect and follow you guys and maybe support you in some way, shape, or form.
Well, that'd be great. We are on Facebook at The Whalers Brigade. You can find us on Twitter at The Whalers Brigade. At Whalers Brigade, I'm sorry. YouTube, you can search The Whaler Guys. And on Instagram, we are The Whaler Guys. It's like Peter alluded to earlier, we have our shows on YouTube after they air at our public access channel. We have over 30,000 views there. Twitter, about 200 to 300, and then Instagram about 150, and now over 1,600 with the Facebook page, and we're tied into other Hartford Whaler groups that reach up to about 25,000 to almost 100,000 when you put them all together.
Right, and I just had to throw this one little 30-second story in here. So, as you know, from the Chicago area, the Blackhawks have 3 coaches, Joe Quenneville, Kevin Dineen, and Ulf Samuelsson, who were big Whalers to the fans here. So the Hartford Whalers Booster Club is an NHL-recognized booster club, and they do these bus trips, and a couple times we've gone to see the Chicago Blackhawks. And to our surprise, Joe Quenneville, Kevin Dineen, and Ulf Samuelsson met the bus load of fans before the game. Jerry and I were there. We got to meet them and say hello. And I don't know if I've ever remember coaches talking to fans, even for just 5, 10, 15 minutes, signing autographs, taking pictures, an hour and a half, 2 hours before a game, and that goes to show you that how much the fans love these guys. As a matter of fact, when the Blackhawks were winning their Stanley Cups, Hartford was a great subrogate of that. They loved, people were rooting hard for Chicago Blackhawks because they loved those coaches, those players. Those are Hartford Whaler guys to us.
Well, that's great. I mean, you guys are supporting all these other sort of teams and Soulmates and Winnipeg and all that kind of stuff. It's probably high time that the league sort of recognized that you got a fertile territory there in the Hartford area, and why not, given some of the shaky situations that we see elsewhere in the league. Guys, this has been really awesome. I hope our audience, those in the New England area who know and follow you, become even more supportive and of your efforts, and frankly, folks around the country. And look, we get listeners all over the place. I mean, Turkey and New Zealand, Bahrain, and Zimbabwe. I can't even tell you the places that this show sort of leaks into. So if there are Hartford Whaler fans out there, both from the past and maybe newly in the future, hopefully you'll connect with the Whaler guys, Jerry and Peter. I appreciate it very much. Great conversation, and I look forward to staying in touch. Please let me know what's going on, especially if there's some big breakthroughs. I would love to hear about it, and
we will. We'll
history of the team.
We will, and we'll just leave you with one thing. We are one nation under green, and if you disagree with us, you can shut your blowhole.
All right, it's probably high time that I shut my blowhole, don't you think? And we thank the Whaler guys, Peter Hindle, Jerry Erwin, so much for joining us after the latest taping of their show, which you, of course, can watch if you're in the Hartford, Connecticut area on Hartford Public Access Television. It's called The Whaler Guys, as you can imagine, and they're there every week. And if you're not in the Hartford area, you can find them on YouTube. Just search The Whaler Guys on YouTube, and you will find all of their episodes that they post after they're airing on public TV there in Hartford. Some great stuff about the Whalers' past, the story of the Whalers' present, and perhaps what could be, again, Whalers' future on that YouTube site. And I think it's at the HWBC on YouTube. If you can't remember that, just search them up on YouTube. Let's see. You can find them on Twitter, of course, at Whalers Brigade. You'll find a Facebook page about them, devoted to them, called Whalers Brigade as well. And at Instagram, you'll find them at _Whaler_guys there as well. For us, please, by all means, make sure that you bookmark and go early and often to our website. That is called goodseatsstillavailable.com. And there, of course, you will find all of our many dozens of episodes to date, as well as in the future. You will see, of course, this episode, number 63. You will find links to fun and goodies there, some imagery that we've dug up, and, of course, all those old episodes. If you see a book or a movie that we reference, just click on those links there, usually Amazon, sometimes iTunes, and by buying said piece of media from those links, you'll be giving a few shekels to our show and keeping us alive and healthy and putting out this great content every week, as we love doing for you. On social media, you'll find us too. On Twitter, you can find us at Good Seats Still. You'll find us on Instagram at Good Seats Still Available. And you, of course, find us on Facebook as well. There's a little page there devoted to our little fun show. And last but not least, we want to thank the good Dr. Jerry Payne, our producer and editor extraordinaire. He of Podfly, he says, Podfly Productions. Of course, that's podfly.net. Check him out. You got some podcasting needs. Best place to go. Podfly.net and Podfly Productions. Okay, we cannot let you hanging and end this episode without regaling you in the tune, the theme song, if you will. The Jack Shea. It's not Shea, is it? I think it's Jack Say, right? The pseudonym was Jack Say. His name was actually Jacques Jay, I think was the full name. But he went under the name of Jack Say, and he was the composer and the arranger of this song, and we'll leave you with it. It's called Brass Bonanza, and we salute you, Hartford Whaler fans, and we wish you the best in getting a team back. So until next week, take care, everybody.